The NFL playoff bracket is locked in, and we got some questions and some storylines to get into. Let's start off on the NFC side. The biggest question going into the postseason for the Seattle Seahawks: can Sam Darnold maintain ball security? Coming into the postseason, he's turned the ball over 20 plus times. That can happen because despite how good our defensive unit is, it's hard to overcome turnovers in the playoff setting. I still have some questions about whether or not our offense can remain consistent. During the last month or two of the season, we saw spurts in between games where the unit will struggle to move the ball, and that can't happen during the postseason because that will be the difference maker in whether or not you get sent home. It's going to be rocking at Lumen Field. There's no doubts about that. Those fans are ready for this team to see playoff success, but at the end of the day, it's going to come down to whether or not Sam Darnold avoids being Sam Darnold. Can he limit those giveaways or just not have them at all? Because if that's the case, this Seattle squad has every single tool to reach the Super Bowl. Next up, the biggest question for the Los Angeles Rams: are they still Super Bowl favorites? During the final stretch of the season, this team fell off slightly. I believe that was due to some injuries across the offensive line, and then not having Davante Adams was a huge loss as it made scoring in the red zone much more difficult. Davante Adams should be back for their Saturday matchup against the Panthers. And then offensively, we just need to remember that this team, when we're running the football effectively, no one can mess with us. Defensively, I have some concerns as well, but this is how the team has been playing all season long. If they can just tighten up and find a way to get more takeaways, then that would definitely ease the stress level for a lot of fans. Special teams is another concern. If they can limit the mistakes, which has been a common theme in a lot of the losses that we've had, this team, in my mind, can no doubt win the Super Bowl this year. Moving over to the San Francisco 49ers, my biggest question for them entering the playoffs: can this team win with this defense? Going back to the Week 18 matchup, they did limit the Seahawks to 13 points, but if we go back to the Sunday night game against the Chicago Bears, they gave up almost 40 points. This defense can be had. They're not particularly great in the run game. It's going to come down to whether or not Brock Purdy and that offense could get going. What's difficult about that, however, is the fact that there's a ton of great defensive units that they will more than likely go up against if they make a deep postseason run. In the wild card matchup this upcoming Sunday, they got that Eagles defense that's been revamped. If they make it past Philly, then they might have to worry about a Rams defense, and we've already seen what's happened when they've gone up against the Seattle defense. This offense has a lot to burden, and if they're not overwhelmingly great, it's going to be difficult for the San Francisco 49ers to make a deep postseason run. The biggest question for the Chicago Bears: can their regular season success translate to postseason success? Something to monitor in the first playoff game is whether or not they execute on all the little things, special team wise, defensively, offensively, moving the ball, scoring touchdowns rather than kicking field goals. That's all going to be instrumental in whether or not that regular season success we've seen throughout the year translate to postseason success. Defensively, the Bears have to be better, and the recipe for their success is getting takeaways. And then going back to their offense, we know how great Caleb Williams has been this season. We know how dominant the run game is with the tandem of Monangai and Swift. But looking at the wide receiver room, they're banged up a little bit. It's going to come down to Luther Burden delivering, along with those two tight ends and Cole Kmet and Colston Loveland showing up and providing a spark for that offensive unit. Next, the Philadelphia Eagles. Can they jumpstart their offense? Their offense has struggled throughout the course of the season. I've highlighted that extensively. Now's the time for Saquon Barkley to be great. Now's the time for Jalen Hurts to replicate that magic he had during the postseason last year. You have the playmakers to be a prolific offense. It's going to come down to whether or not they can execute. And that's what's going to need to happen if they want to successfully defend their title. Because when you look at the field on the NFC side of the bracket, there's too much talent across the board to have an underwhelming offense and somehow replicate another Super Bowl run. On to the Green Bay Packers. The biggest question for them is this season a dud? Because the whole reason why you go out and you get Micah Parsons is so that you can go and win the Super Bowl. Being without him for the rest of the season and potentially going into next year, how do they overcome the loss of a premium pass rusher? They need a spark from either Rashawn Gary or somebody else to step up and make an impact. I trust that secondary to hold up in coverage, but if they're not able to get after the quarterback, it's going to be difficult for them to execute there. And then offensively, when I look at Jordan Love and that unit, they got to be on point. Jordan Love has to show up and show out. There's a reason why he's getting paid as one of the top quarterbacks. And in this moment, he has to step up and be that guy. And if he doesn't, it will be a long offseason for Packer fans about what this season could have been. And then finally, on the NFC side, the biggest question for the Carolina Panthers: can they make some noise here in the postseason? Coming into this game against the Rams, no one is expecting them to win this game, despite already upsetting us at home not too long ago. Bryce Young and this entire team are young. They lack experience. The lone saving grace for them is that they're going to be at home. They've played much better at the crib compared to on the road. Bryce Young, he has to be better. This is a moment where he's already had a pretty good year, but now is the chance for you to show that you are the franchise quarterback in Carolina. And turn over to the defense. They have been a solid unit throughout the course of the year. Their one weakness, though, however, is a lack of a pass rush. They are in the bottom 10 when it comes to sacks on the year. The Panthers defense is going to have to find a way to bring enough pressure. That way they can complement this secondary, a secondary that is good at getting takeaways, along with playing excellent in coverage. Moving over to the AFC side, the biggest question for the Denver Broncos going into the playoffs: will this offensive unit hold them back? Bo Nix has shown the flashes of being that franchise quarterback. The offensive unit as a whole has talent. Yet, we have performances like this past week against the Chargers, who were resting most of their key defensive players, and they were still struggling to move the ball. The offensive unit didn't even score their lone touchdown on the day. The Broncos offense has to pick it up, because there's no doubt in my mind that this defensive unit is going to handle their business. Because if the Broncos offense wets the bed throughout the course of a game, they will be sent home and will be wondering about whether or not this was one of the biggest missed opportunities for that organization. Looking over in New England, the biggest question for the Patriots is whether or not their inexperience can hinder them in any way. There is experience at the key positions. Mike Vrabel at the head coaching position. Stephon Diggs, he's had those deep postseason runs with the Buffalo Bills. Plus, McDaniels has won numerous Super Bowls in New England as the OC. When I look at the head of the snake and Drake May, he's had a fantastic year, MVP caliber year at that. But this is the postseason. This is a different animal. The one benefit, however, for this young quarterback is that he has nothing to lose and everything to gain. I'm not saying that it's okay for him to waste this opportunity, but if he goes on and has a great run this year in the postseason, the sky's the limit for the New England Patriots. Looking at the Buffalo Bills, is this season the year? There's no Patrick Mahomes. There's no Joe Burrow. No Lamar Jackson. Josh Allen, the reigning MVP, is not only the best quarterback remaining on the AFC side, but in general, when we look at all these playoff teams. Although you can make an argument that this is the weakest team that they've had, when you have Josh Allen, you gotta find a way to overcome that. I believe the defense will be better. I believe offensively, they know what their strengths are as a unit. This feels like it can be the year where at the bare minimum, they can at least come out of the AFC. The Jacksonville Jaguars, the biggest question for them is Trevor Lawrence finally reaching his full potential. Shout out to Liam Cohen. He's been a phenomenal coach. Quite honestly, he probably deserves to be coach of the year. The Jags went from having some questions at quarterback to now they have their franchise quarterback. Trevor's been fantastic down the stretch. Ball security in particular has been great. Ever since that Jacoby Myers trade, he's been dialed in. The Jacksonville Jaguars are the dark horse coming out of the AFC. They defeated the Denver Broncos handily on the road. Their offense has a ton of momentum right now. Defensively, they are a great team. The Jags have a lot of pieces to shock the world, and don't be surprised if they can reach the AFC title game. Next, looking at my LA Chargers, how much will our offensive line hurt us? Jay Herbo has been sacked over 50 times. And if we're able to make a deep postseason run, the defensive units on the AFC side alone, the Broncos and the Texans, stout defensive lines, is going to be difficult to overcome that. Despite having an excellent defense of our own, they have to be much better. And they have to do a better job of giving Justin Herbert enough time. And speaking of Jay Herbo, there's still some pressure on him to win a playoff game. He hasn't been particularly great in his first 2 playoff starts, considering all the praise that he gets across the league for being one of the better quarterbacks. The Houston Texans, how far can their defense take them? We know how excellent Will Anderson Jr., Derek Stingley Jr., Danielle Hunter, the list goes on the defensive side with all their playmakers. Can the offensive unit do their part? Since CJ Stroud's return from that concussion, I've been encouraged by the offense. They've looked much better being able to move the ball. I do believe they have a weakness where if they're not able to hit the home run balls, it becomes a bit more difficult for them to put points on the board and move the ball efficiently. I would like for them to get the ball out quicker, especially considering this offensive line in Houston isn't the greatest. The Texans are a sneaky team because they have an elite defense. They have the quarterback play. On any given Saturday or Sunday, they can beat any team here on the AFC side. As long as that offensive unit capitalizes in their spots, this team will be tough to beat. And lastly, we got the Pittsburgh Steelers. Are we giving them enough respect? Yes, we can for the most part expect them to be in a playoff game, but can they go on and win a playoff game? Aaron Rodgers has been good offensively as a whole. I don't think Pittsburgh is particularly great. The 2 running back sets have allowed them to have great success. Jaylen Warren is running the football extremely well. Gainwell is more particularly great for the passing game. Having those 2 on the field at the same time will create some mismatches. And then looking at the defense, they've been high-low for a majority of the year. We saw against the Baltimore Ravens, they had a lot of blown coverages. If they do that against the Houston Texans, who I've already mentioned, love the deep ball and the home run plays, it's going to be difficult for them to win this game. I won't discredit the Steelers for making the postseason. You don't just get here by accident. This Steelers team has the talent on both sides. TJ Watt should have a much better impact second game back, and getting DK Metcalf back should uplift this offense. I won't count them out just yet, but again, I don't feel confident in this team being able to win a playoff game this year. Comment down below on your thoughts on the storylines and the questions coming into this postseason run. Most importantly, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you all in the next one.